fourth thing that we must do is to make sure that we strengthen the institutions that manage corruption. The PDP government during the Obasanjo's time came up with ICPC and EFCC. That's the creation of PDP, to dedicate special effort to fighting corruption. And we've been going on with it. If the leadership is weak, then as a government, we will change. But the basic thing is to strengthen this institution.
Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, time is up for that question. But I have the singular privilege as moderator to do follow-up questions, and I'm going to exercise that privilege right now. You have just spoken about the creation of the ICPC and the EFCC, creations of the PDP government. Some people will say that in spite of those institutions, corruption is still thriving in Nigeria. Now, if you are re-elected president of Nigeria, what would you do differently to curb corruption?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That first and foremost, these institutions were established to refocus on corruption. But fighting corruption is not limited to EFCC and ICPC alone. It is the primary responsibility of every citizen to fight corruption like fighting crime by reporting cases of corruption to this establishment. One thing that I will do differently is that I will not interfere with the operations. I'll give them the free hand to investigate anybody that is linked up with corruption. I will obey the rule of law, because a country that the leadership don't obey any law, then you will expect the followership also to resist it. I will make sure that if it is in terms of capacity building, they are properly exposed to training, they are properly financed, and they are encouraged to do what is right. I believe the weakness, if there are any, is probably maybe senior government functionaries interfering. But even when I was the governor of Bayelsa State, I always opened my doors. I remember when I was in the office one day and the local bank manager called that, EFCC are coming to investigate the state. I said, they should go ahead. As long as you don't limit them and encourage them to do what is right, definitely Nigerians will do well. And that is what I will do. I don't believe that it is only Mr. President himself that is going to investigate the vaults of any bank or the treasury of any parastatal. No. And if you look at what we are doing, and which I will continue to do, the very first thing I directed that should be done is to audit some very big organizations like NNPC. Nobody has asked for external auditing of NNPC for all this period, because that's where our bulk of money comes. And I feel that we must know exactly what is happening. And I directed the Minister of Finance to get external auditors to audit NNPC. I will make sure that we get external auditors to audit major parastatals of government if the internal auditors don't satisfy us. We must know how much money we have and how the money is spent. Of course, most agencies are doing this biometrics, and that's what we'll do. Corruption itself is something that you need to look at it from different perspectives. In most cases, people are limited to financial corruption. Maybe a government functionary putting his hands to the till and taking money. But corruption is far beyond that. Even the mere perception is a form of corruption. You must encourage people to accommodate others and to work with every other Nigerian. Don't discriminate against other Nigerians, irrespective of their background.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Malam Mohammed Gaba, your turn.
Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, let's go back to debates. Globally, debates during elections are being used to strengthen the democratic culture in the society. Recently, there is this controversy that you did not accept debate invitations to 1 or 3 debates where your political contemporaries were also invited. This evening, your 3 other fellow presidential candidates are not participating with you. As PDP presidential candidate, what is your disposition towards debates in Nigeria?
The PDP as a party believes that all political office holders at all levels should give account of themselves as people and give account of the government they head. And that is why even in 2003, the PDP presidential candidate, even though he was a sitting president, participated in the debate. In 2007, I was a vice presidential candidate. I participated in the debate. That's the PDP position. This time around, even in my opening statement, I did mention that I was ready for the debate. Probably you people can organize, or another body can organize another debate. Probably, well, some of the stories I read in the papers was that, oh, Mr. President didn't come because he wanted questions to be leaked out to him. Rearrange the debate. Let the candidates themselves ask themselves questions, so that nobody will come with spurious stories to deceive Nigerians. What happened was maybe a communication gap. More than 12 bodies indicated interest and got to us that they want to host presidential debates. And as a sitting president doesn't have the luxury, and even the other presidential candidates, I believe they don't have the luxury to appear in 12 or more different debates. And we are told that there is a body, of course this is your body, the Nigerian Election Debate Group, that normally coordinates presidential debates. Did I refuse the invitation? I did not receive it. I refused the invitation. I was told that the medium, that the research was not that big, that very few Nigerians listen to that, and that it's better for us to use a medium that everybody, even those who have radios alone, will listen to these presidential debates. And I was waiting for, I was told that was to come up on the 29th. And I was waiting for that 29th. Some of the journalists I met with can remember that we met in Lagos private with the proprietors of media houses. And I told, and later on editors, and I told them that I wanted to address international press conference. But before that international press conference, I need to meet with them at that level. But this debate came up, and we now say, okay, let us finish with the debate before the international press conference. So it's not as if the PDP government ran away from debate. It's a communication gap, but I will advise that this time around, maybe in 2015, the Nigerian Election Debate Group should take charge. From beginning, immediately parties are going on with their primaries. Announce this so that all the parties, all the presidential candidates will know that this is the authentic body that should organize the debate. There's no country that will expose their president to.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Sagbenga Adefai, you have the next question.
Dr. Jonathan, well, this is closely related to this matter of debate. It's about the media. The role of the media in governance is, among others, to educate the public for understanding of the government policies and programs, sharpen political direction and ideological focus. But successive Nigerian administrations, military or civilian, have instead always sought to intimidate, harass, muzzle, and sometimes compromise the media. What will be your attitude and policy direction with Nigerian mass media, especially the famous Freedom of Information Bill and broadcast license for community radio? Because it's only Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa without community radio. Thank you.
Thank you. But I wouldn't want to ask you a question. But in my own case, I'm already a serving president. And you know the way I relate with the media. So it's not a question of futuristic. For those who want to come in, yes, it's futuristic. You can ask, what am I doing with the media? You know I'm one of the best friends of the media, irrespective of what they write. I have not harassed anybody. I have not used any power that I have against any media house or an individual, even though some of the write-ups are even libelous in nature. But as a president, you must observe some of these excesses, because we know that the media is a group that I believe are doing a very good job for this country, irrespective of the fact that sometimes we may not smile over some of the things they write. And it's a body that I have high respect and regard for. I always tell media practitioners that there are two professional groups that I admire: the media practitioners and lawyers, because of their vast experience. You will know little things of almost everything. So it exposes you so much. And probably my first job after leaving school, sir, would have been to work in the media. I remember the first application I wrote then was to the Nigerian Tide, in those days, to be a reporter. But that is history. So I'm a friend, and in terms of the Freedom of Information Bill, it has not come to me. Immediately it gets to me, I think I will have no reservation as to endorsing it, except there are provisions that we need to talk, but definitely it will go through. Sometimes bills come, and probably as a president, you know a little more than others, and you may notice one or two things that need to be adjusted. I pray that this time around we should not even have that situation. But I can assure you that the media, they are my friends, and for the past 4 years, I have been here as a vice president, then now. In Bayelsa State, I served for 8 years. So my relationship with the media is well known. So it's not a question of saying, what will you do? But what are you doing? And you know what I've been doing, that I've been relating well with the media, and I'll continue to relate with the media practitioners.
Candidate Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, let me take you to the power sector. This is one area that bothers Nigerians a lot. You know that every promise to raise the effectiveness of the power sector in generation and in distribution has so far proved very difficult. The promise of 4,000 megawatts does not seem to have been achieved. How will you specifically ensure adequate power generation and distribution to achieve steady, regular power supply in Nigeria?
The power sector is one sector that all Nigerians know that is one of the major priorities of this administration from the time I came in as a vice president to the late president. And indeed, during the Obasanjo's governance, what happened in this country, if you look at the history of the power, is that for so many years, there was no additional infrastructure, be it the generating plants or transmission or distribution lines, until the PDP government came in 1999. And that first administration, headed by Chief Obasanjo, came up with the concept of the NIPP projects, that the state government, the local governments, and the federal government jointly made some money available from excess crude to intervene in the power sector under an arrangement that the 3 tiers of government will own this infrastructure. And when it is set up, when it begins to generate revenue, the revenue will be shared among these 3 arms of government. Along the line, even before we came in, there was this problem that was not properly handled, because we operate a constitution that has defined operation in terms of sharing money. The state governments, the local government never complained because everybody want power. But the revenue mobilization felt that direct deduction from the excess crude and being spent then by the federal government, because the states were not involved in the process of award of contracts. So it's like the federal government was taking money from the states and spending, and that was not in line with the spirit of the Constitution. So the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission took the federal government to court, not even the states. And so when we came on board, it was stalemated. For almost all the first 2 years, we couldn't move anywhere. until we have to set up a body through the Economic Council that then, as the vice president, I was chairing, because the current vice president was the governor of Kaduna State. So, in fact, he was even a member. We set up a body that all the states will be represented in that body, one governor per state, and of course, at the federal level, some minister of power and some other ministers form that body. So all the contracts are processed by that body and awarded by that body. You just go to Federal Executive Council meeting for ratification because of the procurement law that said that for federal government to spend up to 30% of any investment in terms of contracts, the Federal Executive Council must know about it. Otherwise, the Federal Executive Council couldn't have even bothered to look at it. So from that, we started the projects again. And the power sector.
All right. Mr. Gbenga Adefaye, you have a follow-up question to that?
Yes, I have a follow-up, and it's a question, really. Because Dr. Jonathan just spoke about the action of the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. And that takes me to the real follow-up. Now, the states have been agitating for a greater share of money from the federation account because they believe, the states and the local government, that they are closer to the people. They will impact more directly if they have more resources. As president, if re-elected, will you be disposed to working with the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission to seed more resources to the states and the local government so that they can impact more with the people they relate to? Thank you.
Luckily, I'm somebody who passed through all this. Maybe that is what placed me in a better position than other presidential candidates, because I know what happens at the local government. As a deputy governor, I supervise the local government, so I know the pains of the local government. Then, of course, as a deputy governor and as a governor, I knew the pains of the state, and that's why one of the things that I did, and some other president wouldn't have been able to do, even as a vice president then, was the funds that states has in the UBE program, the counterpart funding that the states couldn't access, and the funds were just there in billions. And primary school and secondary school people across had no shares, no funds, and I said, no, we cannot have dead funds because I'm coming from the state and I know. And we came up with options, which of course we can talk about that later. Now that fund is being used because of my background experience as somebody who operated at that level. So in terms of revenue sharing, I believe, and indeed the PDP government believe in the rule of law. Government set up bodies, and you allow these bodies, the agencies is set up to do their work. The Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission is a body that is established by the Constitution and is a semi-autonomous body. It's the Constitution that made it so. That is why they took Mr. President to court. They sued Obasanjo's government to tell you that they are quite independent. A body that no ministry will take the federal government to take Mr. President to court. The minister is going to lose his or her job that day. But they took the federal government to court. I just told you about the NIPP project. So they are autonomous. They are not bodies that you can interfere with the activities. And they have the responsibility to come up with how we should share the revenue of this country and how much money public officers should take as salaries and allowances. If tomorrow they come up with any revenue allocation formula, yes, I will send it to the National Assembly because normally it passes through the president, send it to the National Assembly. I will pass it to the National Assembly where all parts of this country are represented. That is the body that can sit down and say this is correct or this is not correct. And if the National Assembly, in their own wisdom, approves any new revenue formula, definitely will implement it. The country belongs to all of us. Mr. President does not own Nigeria. Nigeria belongs to all Nigerians. That is one thing I believe. So I cannot restrict sharing of revenue to any tier of government. I may not want to comment on whether we have more money at the center or there's less money at the state level. That maybe will come in a different question if you ask.
All right, Malam Gaba, sit on.
Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, let's look at the economy. There seems to be this consensus that the Nigerian economy cannot attain appreciable level of growth as long as the nation fails to break through its current mono-economic and overdependence on oil. What economic agenda have you fashioned for the nation?
The statement you made is a statement of fact, and it's what every Nigerian believes. And I used to tell people that the first skyscraper in this country was not built from oil, money. It was from cocoa in Ibadan, the cocoa house. The first television station was not from oil money. It was from agric, also in Ibadan. Just to tell you the example, a number of countries are surviving today that did not have oil. And that is one reason why the PDP government, if you look at our manifesto, emphasize on how we revitalize agriculture. On this, as a basic guideline, the PDP believe that every state must specialize in 2 crops. There must be the economy of comparative advantage. Look at 2 crops that you think you have comparative advantage in terms of production. One for local consumption, and one should be cash crop for export. We're implementing that, and that's one of the reasons, if you have listened to our campaigns, we're emphasizing that for us to revolutionize agriculture, to talk about mechanizing agriculture and commercializing agriculture, you must irrigate. If you believe in the rain-fed agriculture, and especially some parts of the north that it rains only 4 months of the year, you will have monocropping. You crop only once a year. And that's why we're saying that in the next 4 years, we're going to revisit all our dams and all our irrigation projects. And of course, power. When you have power, then you have the dams and you have the irrigation projects. Then, of course, you can now begin to talk about agriculture. In addition, one of the greatest challenges we have, if you discuss with the farmers, is the seeds or the varieties of crops that we use, or even in terms of animals, our cultivars. They compare that sometimes when you cultivate 1 acre of maybe rice or other cereals, or maybe in terms of production of milk, the volume of milk produced by 1 cow in Nigeria is just like 1/10 of the same for a similar cow of a different species. So to bring high-yielding seeds and high-yielding varieties of cattle is one. Another thing, if you look at it now, you listen to the petroleum ministers, he talked about fertilizer plants and fertilizer blending plants. In this case, let me talk about the blending plants. One of the problems we have in this country is that we import fertilizer that are not adapted to the characteristics of our soil. And that is why the Minister of Petroleum Resources is now coming up with 5 blending plants that will be located in 5 different parts of the country that will blend based on the local characteristics of the soil.
Thank you so much.
To increase yield.
Thank you very much. The time is up. Except Gaba has a follow-up if you are not satisfied with the answer you have been given.
Yes, I have a follow-up. Dr. Goodluck, let's look at the problem of our refineries in Nigeria today. Most of the refineries are shut down, and I don't know what effort you are making to ensure that you make refineries very effective.
I agree with you that until we are in position to refine enough petroleum products locally, we cannot, as a nation, be proud of ourselves. We produce crude oil. There's no reason why we should import petroleum products. We have refineries, 2 in Port Harcourt, 1 in Warri, 1 in Kaduna.